We continue our conversation with the author of this book. It's called Storm Chaser. It is the Terry Law story, and Terry is here. A subtitle of this book is At the Heart of Every Storm Lies the Power of God to Change Your World. And Terry, you have seen this world change dramatically. And for so many places around the world, you've seen it change for God and good as you presented the gospel. In our last segment, we talked a little bit about the Middle East and what's happening there, in Iraq and Iran. Can you take us, you were recently in Ukraine, tell us, we're doing a lot of work there, and we've given a lot of covers there with partnerships. What's going on in Ukraine as it relates to Russia and the international scene itself?
Could I tell you an interesting story about Ukraine?
Please do.
I've been working behind the Iron Curtain throughout the 80s and the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I noticed in the Ukrainian believers, there was a sorrow because they didn't see joy, they didn't see the things that we see in the West. And I really sensed that the Lord would like to introduce them into praise and worship that was uplifting to the Lord and full of the joy of the Lord. So I went to my friend Don Moen. You probably know him. Don has done a lot of praise and worship music. He did an album for me in Russian. And I smuggled it in to a little town in Ukraine. And I had 60 leaders of the underground church come from all of the 15 Soviet republics. But I was scared because I didn't know this music they've never heard before.
What year would have this been?
This was 1989.
All right, totally different environment.
Totally different environment. So I told my friend to push the button on the boombox we had in this little farm. We were up the farm house out in the woods. And the music started to go. And these guys, there were 60 of them. And the man sitting beside me gasped. They'd never heard a beautiful, and it was Heal Our Land. The first song was Heal Our Land. Well, it went everywhere. I produced 500,000 copies of praise and worship that we circulated through the underground in Russia. And when I went back to Kiev last summer and talked to a bunch of leaders, I said, how many of you have ever heard Our Land? John, every hand in the room went up. And when I told them how God had put it on our heart to get it to them, everybody in the room was crying.
Oh my, yeah.
The hunger for God, but to see the praise and to see what praise did in lifting them up toward the Lord. Everywhere we go over there now, there's a new sense of God in the church in Kiev.
And they need a new sense of God and a fresh touch of God upon them because of what's happening. What's your assessment in your recent visit?
When I was in Kiev, my wife is a teacher at Oral Roberts University. She's one of the leaders in the English department, but she also emphasizes Christian worldview. That's her bailiwick. I took Barbara with me because I wanted her to teach. We had about 100 pastors who'd gathered in Kiev. They came from everywhere. And the stories were wild in terms of what Russia was doing. Everybody was, at that time, were afraid because that Korean airliner, the Ukrainian, what was it? It was an airline flying somewhere that was downed by the Russians on the Korean or the Ukrainian border.
Right.
The shock that went around the world was instant. Holland had lost 150 of their own people on that plane, but it died almost instantly because of ISIS and Iraq and what was breaking there. It seems that this stuff gets pushed to the side. But the story of Ukraine is a story of heartbreak in terms of people who are hungry for democracy, they're hungry for God, they're hungry for the West to get involved. The Ukrainians do not want to join with Russia. They want to join NATO. They want to be a part of the Eastern or the Western European bloc nations. And I really have a heart for that nation. I remember a brother there talking about a prophetic something that he had in his heart. And he said, we believe that God is going to raise up a mighty church out of Ukraine, and we're going south. We're going down into the Muslim areas, and that God is going to use our young people in evangelism. But the need in Ukraine is graphic. I mean, it's graphic. I talked to pastors who had their friends shot by the Russians when they came in. The Russians were across the border. They were camped.
This is Crimea?
Crimea was south, but this was on the eastern border of Ukraine. Russia was causing incursions. They're doing it today. I don't trust Putin for a minute. I don't think his word is worth anything. But I'll tell you one thing, that there's a hunger in Ukraine for God, and those people are crying out for the Lord. And I believe God's going to give them an answer to their prayer.
Amen. And it is an underreported story.
Totally.
And we need to keep our eyes on that. And
Totally.
with friends like you and other partners that we have there, we're hearing more and more, and we want to do more and more as a ministry of 100.
I'm glad to hear that, John. I really am.
Terry, it's so good to see you. Thank you. Please come and see us again and again. And God bless you as you are out there telling people about Storm Chaser. That's who you are. Keep chasing the storms and keep coming back and telling us what you find.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, God bless you, man. Thank you.